Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Today is really special because not only is this episode our commemorative Nurses Week episode, but it's also our 100th episode. And so because of all of these monumental things in podcast world, today I wanted to bring you a guest that is extremely important and just perfect for this because you have all heard about her already. So I would like to introduce to the listening audience, Jenny Detwiler. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you, Detwiler. It's a little different than my computer reads it out. And Jenny is the associate director of Vanderbilt's Life Flight Event Medicine program. So tell us what that is before we get into anything too personal. How's that sound?
So, Vanderbilt's Life Flight Event Medicine program, we medically staff over 1,200 events a year. So, anything ranging from races to Preds games, Geota soccer games, Bridgestone Arena, CMA Fest, Belmont, any sporting events
They've got you there.
we provide medical coverage for.
Awesome. And you providing medical coverage, this comes natural to you because you are a nurse and in charge of all of these things with event medicine. This is where I think we get the chance to tell you about how we know each other personally and then professionally. And everybody, this is the Jennifer that you have heard about who held my hand in the emergency room. If you have read I'm Here, this is that Jenny. Yes, live and in person. So do you feel special now?
A little special.
Good, because
You
you
always
are.
make me feel special, though, Marcus.
Well, good. So, on this podcast, I always harken back to our time together in the emergency department, and I ask guests to share a story about a time that someone was there for them or a time that you were there for somebody else. And this is also the same assignment that I give to my pre-meds at the beginning of every semester. They have to write a 2-page reflection on a time that they were there for somebody else or a time that someone was there for them. And so if I can we go back to, dear God, has it been 30 years? 30 years ago this year when
Oh
you and
my
I
gosh.
happened to come into contact with one another. Who were you at that time?
I can't believe it's been 30 years. Can I say that I was only 12 years old? I guess I
Yeah.
can't. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, well, I was actually 20 years old and was a paramedic by training, but working as a patient care tech at Barnes Jewish Hospital in the emergency department.
20 years old kid, right? Although you got
20-year-old kid.
training at that time, you were moonlighting at the hospital. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was working there full time, actually.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so, what drew you to wanting to work in emergency or trauma care?
Well, that's a really interesting story. So, I actually wanted to become a police officer, and having conversations with some friends who were in that field, they told me at that time to go to EMT school because that would help progress me into the law enforcement field. And when I went to EMT school, I absolutely positively loved it. I mean, I loved it. I felt like I found my joy. I felt like I found my passion learning everything that I did in EMT school. And then that's when I got a job at Barnes Jewish Hospital in the emergency department when I graduated from EMT school as a patient care tech. And so then my career has progressed from there.
And we can get into all of your executive stuff later because it's super, super impressive. But first, I'd like to point out that this is Barnes Jewish Hospital that you're talking about. It's a major teaching university hospital in St. Louis, in the heart of St. Louis, and the early '90s was a difficult time, I would assume. It was a pretty violent time. And I imagine you were seeing a lot of crazy stuff come into the ER every day.
Mm-hmm.
What was different the night that they rolled me in?
Marcus, I have to say it started out as a typical night working in the emergency department. And I worked night shift. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I may have come in earlier that night I always worked overtime. I was a young kid and wanted a lot of money, but, when we got the call over the radio about you coming in, and it wasn't just you, it was you and your two friends all came to our emergency department. I was standing outside the trauma room getting dressed in the whole trauma garb. And I remember standing there getting dressed and you rolling by me. And this is going to sound a little bit gruesome and I apologize, but your eyeballs were hanging out of your sockets and laying on your cheeks. Right. And so
at least one was, yeah.
Yeah, one was. And it was like an instantaneous moment for me when you rolled by because I knew you were 18 years old. So you were close to my age. And I remember this like it happened yesterday and just you rolling past me, there was an instant connection. And that's the only way that I can describe it, as this kid's life is going to change forever. And I just immediately felt it. There was nothing else different about that night. It was just your typical night, but there was just this level of almost a little bit of heartbreak when I initially saw you rolling past me. It was almost like a movie moment.
And so what do you do then? I mean, you see me roll past. What's the next thing that you do other than feel some kind of connection or knowledge that this is a big moment for this individual?
Well, the first thing I thought was, I need to get it in gear because you have a room full of amazingly talented individuals who can save lives. And I wanted to be in that room with them to help, because, we didn't know what we didn't know at that time about, your stability at the moment, right? You're a critically ill trauma patient. So instincts just kind of stepped in at the moment, and we started. It's like a well orchestrated machine in there when you're doing, working on a trauma patient. Everybody has their roles, and I had my role, and I knew what my role was. And frankly, that role was to get you naked, remove all your clothing, put you on the monitor, and all of those good things that I'm supposed to do. So immediately just, kind of stepping back in the moment a little bit and doing what I needed to do to help save your life.
So at what point was I stable enough that you could hold my hand and be there for me?
I don't know if I would ever say that you were really truly stable enough. But when I originally put my hand in your hand, you squeezed it, and that's when I said, Marcus, you're you've been in a car accident. You're at Barnes Jewish Hospital. My name's Jennifer, and I'm here. And then you would squeeze it back. And there was just so much activity going around. And one of the things that I truly remember standing there was this poor guy. He can't see because of the trauma to your face. He can't talk because they criked you in the field.
Had you seen a crike at that point? Had you seen a patient criked at that point?
I have, but very few. Maybe one other time. So you couldn't see, you couldn't talk. The only thing that was really coming out of your mouth was blood and gasoline. And the only thing that you really could do is hear and feel. And I could imagine, if anybody has ever been in a trauma resuscitation in their life, it's chaotic. It's a controlled chaos most of the time, but it's still chaotic. And I just remember thinking, this has got to be so incredibly scary for him, because the only thing that he truly understands right now is what he is feeling as far as pain, and hearing as far as the chaos. And that's why I just wanted to let you know that there was someone there to help you get through this terrible tragedy that you experienced that night.
And I assume nobody taught you. You didn't learn in EMT school, medic school. Nobody in the ER trained you to say, I'm here.
No.
You just know it, right? It's just human. And that's what I try to convey to people, that we can all use a little bit of vocabulary, but we all know what it means to be there for another person. And I don't know how I could have gotten through that night without you. I don't know how. I know you didn't crike me, and there were no chest compressions or anything like that going on, but I don't know how I could have mentally, cognitively survived that night without having somebody there that I knew was watching out for me. So, as always, thank you.
You're welcome, Marcus.
So, okay, I remember that. I don't remember you transporting me. I assume you transported me or helped transport me up to the SICU, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's the last place that I remember Jenny for 20 years. 20 years. So people have heard the story that after I got out of grad school and I was keynoting around the country and such like that, I got the invitation to come back to Barnes, and that's it. I had written this book a few years before based on those words that you said to me in that time in the ER, and tell me the story. Then that I can understand that you said that this was a moment that that you felt a connection with this young patient rolling into your ER. I can't believe that you remembered that after all the traumas that you have seen over the years, and yet you did.
I never forgot your name. And I think every single healthcare person or persons probably has that one patient that, or at least if they don't, I hope they do eventually have that one person that they will never forget their name. And you were that person for me.
And I am grateful. I am grateful. So let's go back then to you leave me that night, left in the SICU. Where does your life go from there?
Oh my gosh. Where does my life go from
Where
there?
does your life go from there, professionally and personally?
So professionally, I ended up going, a few years later, I ended up going to nursing school. I actually eventually ended up transferring up to the surgical burn trauma ICU. And then that's where I started out my career as a new grad nurse in the surgical burn trauma ICU at Barnes Jewish Hospital. And that was fun. I got married, and my husband at the time, his name is Drew. He was active duty military and also a nurse. And we got transferred to Alaska and spent 3 years in Alaska. And I worked in the ICU there as a nurse. And that was really fun. And then he got transferred back to Barnes Jewish, or back to Scott Air Force Base, which is right on the other side of St. Louis in Illinois. And so I went back to Barnes Jewish Hospital, and I went back to the surgical burn trauma ICU as a nurse, and eventually became a assistant nurse manager. And then shortly after I became the assistant nurse manager, I became the clinical nurse manager of the surgical burn trauma ICU.
And that that position you would hold, at least for the next several years, until somehow I walk back into your life.
Yes.
Tell me about this from your standpoint.
Oh my gosh, this was the best story ever. So we had, Barnes Jewish had a patient experience week. And for that patient experience week, they had, and I don't remember who the speaker was supposed to be, but we were going to have a speaker come in and talk to the teams for that entire week. It is a speaker that I had seen before. So I was just, sitting in my office doing my managerial duties when my HR business partner, Josh, called me and was like, "Hey, Jenny, have you gone to see the patient experience speaker today or yet?" And I said, "No." I said, "I don't think I'm going to go. I'm going to make sure that I cover my teams so they can go see him. I've seen him before. I've heard him talk before. And I would really like all of my team members to go." So I was covering patients so they could go. And he said, "Oh, no. It's somebody different." And then he starts telling me about a former patient who came into the ER, and he is describing the story in HR business partner terms. He's not medical. So, he starts telling me this story, and I feel my heart kind of pounding a little bit, because I was thinking, man, this really sounded familiar to me. And I said, "Josh," I said, "What's his name?" And he goes, "Marcus Engel."
20 years at this point, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Getting a little emotional still to this day. And so I said, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh." I said, "I can't believe it." I said, "I took care of him in the emergency department all those years ago." And he said, "Oh my God, Jenny, he wrote a book about you." And I was so sorry.
You're good. We don't,
It
we don't
was a,
apologize for human emotions.
it was, I couldn't, I couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't believe it. And I just kept saying, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And Carrie Sona, who's my clinical nurse specialist and still one of my very dearest friends to this day, was in the office across the hall from me. And she's like, "What is happening in your office right now?" And and I told her, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Jenny." And then like I I was so emotional, like I couldn't, I don't even think I don't even, I can't remember really the next couple hours after that whole thing came into realization. And I contacted the director of patient experience at the time, and I told her like this is like this was me, and I downloaded a set portion of the book. And I came home and I was reading it to my husband, and I was just like so emotional, just like it was an ugly cry. You know those ugly cries? Yeah, it was an ugly cry moment for Jenny reading, just the portion of the book, to the point where um like he's like, "I'll read this for you." And I'm like, "No, you're not reading this. I'm reading it. I'm getting through it." Um, and, and I remember calling my mom and just like, I mean, and it wasn't like a sad cry. It was like a happy cry. Um, and an exciting cry and emotion. And it's just, it's, it's, it's it was an incredible feeling. It was a very emotional feeling, um, because as healthcare professionals, you you really don't truly understand the impact that you have on people, sometimes until you read it in a book 20 years later. And honestly, I wish every single nurse or paramedic or doctor or radiology tech or whatever your title is, I wish everybody could experience that moment that I had when I was reading that book.
To know that you've had that effect on somebody else. I mean, it's why you got into doing healthcare in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
right? To make a difference, to have an
Yep.
impact, um, to help, to
Yep.
help. And so that's you. Meanwhile, here I am, not knowing that you even really existed, or that you were even still around Barnes or would remember, etc. So you contact patient experience and they say, "Come on down." And you've read my book at this point, at least part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would be super nervous in your situation. I would have been super nervous had I known. Um, and being reintroduced to you, um, and hearing things from your perspective and your point of view, and filling in some of the missing spaces, um, it ranks up there with just the best moments of my life. Absolutely the best moments of my life.
I think it is one of the best moments of my life. and hearing, and then the next day, hearing you tell this in person, I, yeah, it was life changing. That day was, hearing you tell that story in person was life changing for me, honestly.
Right. And folks, we all know that there is a lot of burnout going on in healthcare right now. I assume you see that in your work. I see it everywhere I go, everybody I talk to. And that's kind of where you were at that point. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was. Leadership is a hard job, and it's extremely stressful. And you and I can I'm going to speak for myself, but as a leader, you just kind of, you want to make sure your patients are good, and your patients' families are good, and your teams are good, and the doctors are good, and it's a lot of stress. And even back then, the stress of staffing and making sure you have the appropriate staff, and all of those things that come with, with being a leader. And yeah, I was struggling with some compassion fatigue, and I had really started to think that I was about ready to wave the white flag and like go sell houses. And it was like recession time, so it probably wouldn't have been the smartest idea, but that's kind of where I was at from a compassion fatigue standpoint. And I'm a very faith-based person, and so I truly feel like God brought you back into my life for a reason, and that reason was to stay in healthcare and continue to be a nurse and continue to lead teams, and continue to take care of patients, and and even tell my story for those who need to find their why.
Mm-hmm.
And you have always been my why.
And what you did for me has been my why, so that other people like me who get rolled into an ER, or even just going under gallbladder surgery or whatever, um, that they feel that kind of compassionate presence that I received from you in the ER. That's my why. That's my why. And um, I'm glad we can both be connected to that why. I want to talk a little professionally, okay? Because so you and I are reintroduced. You're the clinical nurse manager at the SICU at that time. From there, you'll go on to direct the emergency room, and
Yes, sir.
then a relocation to a hospital in Nashville for an assistant chief nursing officer job,
Mm-hmm.
to another, to a full chief nursing officer job,
Mm-hmm.
now to being the associate director of the Vanderbilt Life Flight Event Medicine Program. Did I get all those words right?
You got them all right. Yep.
So you've got now a 20 plus year history in leadership.
Yep.
Um, I often remind my audiences that, Jenny at the time was a 20-year-old tech, trained as a paramedic, but now she's moved on to be executive C-suite level leadership. And I remind people that we have to invest in our young talent. If we want to keep healthcare professionals in this game, we've got to be investing in these fresh out of college nursing students, fresh out of residency doctors, all the health professions across the board. How do you do that for those under your charge? How do you do that as a leader? How do you instill that why into young professionals so that they don't get burned out, so that they don't end up suffering from that same kind of compassion fatigue that you said that you were feeling way back when?
Well, I don't know if I have all the right answers, Marcus. And Lord knows, as a leader, I have made a lot of mistakes in my time, and and that's okay. I think, but I also think that leadership has changed post COVID. Um, um, None of us has really led in this unique season of where we're at right now, and so we're always, I think, learning. Um, we have been for the last couple of years so focused on leading in crisis that leading out of crisis has really changed, and so I think that my leadership has changed a little bit, post COVID, to be honest. So some of the things that I have learned is building relationships with your team is really, really important. Knowing them not just on a professional level, but knowing them and their families on a personal level is really important. Also knowing and understanding what their dreams are and actually helping them get there um, is really truly important. Um, Always bring them back to their why, because everybody has a reason why they got into healthcare, right? You will, if you hear people say, "Why did you want to become a nurse?" You will hear folks say they wanted to become a nurse because something happened with them in their childhood and they had some connection to healthcare, and that's why they wanted to be a nurse, or whatever the case may be, right? Nurse, paramedic, doctor, it doesn't matter. So trying to reconnect them back to the why is their why, whatever their why is really important. Um, Communication is really, really important. Again, with your teams, being transparent and honest and being vulnerable with your teams yourself was something that I had never done really a lot as a leader, but leading out of the crisis that we've been in has really, it made me realize the toll it took on me, and sharing that vulnerability with your teams to allow them to be vulnerable is really important. Try to give your team some quick wins. Again, that reconnects them back to the why, and and really celebrate their wins is important.
Uh, Kind of a question that I ask a lot of people that are in positions like yours is, Who's the best leader that you've ever had? Who's the best leader that you've ever worked under that taught you how to be a leader?
Um, there is two that really have come to mind. One of them, his name is John Batali, and he was my director at Barnes Jewish Hospital when I was the nurse manager of the surgical burn trauma ICU. And and this may sound a little bit crazy, but the person who I currently report to, her name is Sherry Dean, who is the executive director over the entire Lifelight program. She's amazing, and even in this short, and I know that I have been a CNO in my past, but even in the short 4 months that I have been at Vanderbilt, she herself has really taught me a lot. And she's with both John and Sherry. They're both authentic. They're both genuine. They both show vulnerabilities. And what I really noticed about the both of them is their team trusts them. And I think that's really important, is to establishing those relationships and trust with your team in order to be a really good leader.
Yeah, trust is such a, I mean, it's essential. It's just
Yes.
absolutely essential. A lot of people love the story, and there is a very much a melting of my audiences when they hear that whenever Garrett retired. For anybody who met me from about 2010 until 17, 16, would have met Garrett, my first yellow lab CNI dog. And one of the great things about the CNI is that when it's time for a dog to retire, and however that dog tells you that it's time to retire, the CNI trusts me enough to let me retire my dog how I see fit. So I could keep the dog, I could give him to a friend, I can give him back to the school, etc. And I have always retired my dogs to friends because I feel like I've got to be the one that's focusing on the new dog, etc. So to adopt one of my previous CNI dogs is something that's only happened 4 times, and you were number 3. So, can you give people a little idea of what your life became like whenever you welcomed Garrett into your family?
Oh, so man, he was such a great dog. He was so loving. What he always and I have a little bit of a kind of a detour story, but one of the things that I loved about Garrett is he always loved to be loved on, standing in between your legs. And my current dog Levi loves to be loved on, standing in between my legs. Like that's where he lives. Um, my daughter Reagan just absolutely loved Garrett, and I think, and they really connected. Reagan and Garrett did. They really connected, and he thought that, I don't know if this was how he was with you, but with me, he thought he was a 80-pound lap dog. And and we loved him, and he was awesome and loved, and he was a really great dog.
Thank you again for taking that on. It takes a lot to adopt a dog that's in his golden years, and um, knowing that you could take care of me in the ER, you could sure take care of my dog later in life. So thank you for that. And it always gives me so much comfort to know that he got to live out his retired life with a family that deeply loved him, and that he got to be a dog. Got to be a dog, not living on airplanes and not living out of hotel rooms and things like that. He got to be a dog, and just like he deserved.
Yeah, he was adorable.
Yeah, thank you. So, just got a little bit of time left. Can I shoot some like rando questions by you?
Oh, yo.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So, I know that you love hiking.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the best place you have ever hiked?
So, my current husband, Mark Detwiler, has really got me into the love of hiking. And he is just a huge outdoorsman. And so, loving him makes me, I think, helps with my love of hiking, just because from a personal standpoint, we love to get out. That's one of the ways of our self-care. We like to just completely disconnect from the modern world and get out and connect with each other and connect with nature. And but the best place that I've ever hiked, we just went hiking and backpacking through Glacier National Park
Oh,
last
yeah.
September, and it is beautiful, gorgeous, inspiring. The beauty of that, the natural beauty of that place is incredible. Is absolutely positively incredible. Tennessee is beautiful. We are on our quest to find every single waterfall in the state of Tennessee, and it is gorgeous. But our trip to Glacier and back will be probably one of the most memorable experiences of my entire life. We had a phenomenal time.
I once heard somebody describe Glacier Park as it's where God lives.
Yes.
I thought that's a pretty
Yes.
amazing way to explain a place.
Yes. Yes.
So
Agreed.
you're in Nashville now.
Yes.
And I know you're a music fan. So my next question for you is, what is the best concert you have ever been to?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. What is the best concert I've ever been to? I have to say it was the Luke Bryant concert probably a year ago
Mhm.
at Bridgestone. And what is so awesome and unique about Nashville is when it's filled with country singers. And so when Luke Bryant was on stage, I wasn't expecting also Tyler Hubbard to come on stage and Jason Aldean to come on stage. And they all just kind of popped in and did the concert with them. And Mark and I had the best time. Like, the best time. It was awesome.
Nice,
Yep.
nice, love it, love it. All right, so my final question for you then, and thank you so much for all of this today. I mean,
Of course.
I
Anything for
feel
you.
like same. I feel like um, you and I have spoken together before on stage, and every time we talk about these things, it gives me just a little bit of a glimpse of some of the areas of my life that I don't recall that are yet still such a profound part of my makeup. And so thank you for that. And of course, thank you for being there for me and for being on this episode and all. I want to ask you, the final question is simply this. If you had the biggest billboard on the highest mountain in the world, what is the message that you would want to broadcast to humanity?
Just one message? Um,
I don't know. I guess you can have 2 billboards if you'd like.
I think the one biggest message would be, and it's a motto that I live by. I hope that I live by. I try to live by, is be relentless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. Find your passion. And when you find your passion, your level of happiness just goes through the roof. So,
Yeah, awesome. Find your passion and then pursue it relentlessly. Love
yep.
it. Love
Sometimes
it.
it's not about titles or pay. Sometimes it's about what brings you joy and passion in life that truly makes you happy.
Well, I have a life, or at least I have a moderately stable, sane existence because of the communication that you gave me, that presence that you gave me that night 30 years ago. So, as always, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for being on this episode that gets to celebrate Nurses Week and also gets to celebrate our 100th episode of the Compassion and Courage podcast. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
Marcus, I want to thank you for being who you are and the gift that you give healthcare providers every day. We all need you and your message right now, and I want to thank you for giving back to us and everything that you do every day.
It's a blessing to get to do what I do. It's a blessing. So, and thank
Ditto.
you, Jenny. Thank you everyone for tuning into this very special episode of Compassion and Courage. Again, this is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Everyone, please subscribe, rate, review, share, all those kind of social media things with the podcast. We appreciate you. And happy Nurses Week to all the nurses out there. We'll see you next time on the next episode of Compassion and Courage.